Welcome, patrons, and oh boy, Dav Summer is finally arrived. We've had 2 trailers blasted in our face. It's time to talk about both of them in one video because at this point I kind of feel like it's necessary. And one more disclaimer for purposes of this video is to talk about lore bits in the trailer. If you are looking for info about news and on the game itself, I have a new little mini-series called Ghil News. I'm trying to bang them out super fast so they are a little bit more topical, and I'll link the playlist to that along with anything else that seems relevant down below. I'm also not going to talk about gameplay because that's not my wheelhouse. I've never really talked about the gameplays of the game here, and I'm going to continue with that. So we're just going on with the story here. The gameplay trailer. Wait, Katie, the official trailer came out first. Why start with the gameplay? Because I can. I make the rules here. But really, for people who have not seen either yet, I feel like seeing the game the way I did, with the game first and the trailer second, just kind of makes a lot more sense. So that's how I'm going to present it to you all. Now, this video is 20 minutes, so unlike previous videos, I just can't sit here and examine every single plot for details. I deeply apologize, but we'll probably still be here for a bit, so let's get going. Now, the gameplay itself was taken in engine. You can tell because there's a little bit of popping in the fence. Shh, don't tell anyone. And is a series of segments of about, like, the first hour of the game or so. I'm also going to take the assumption that you have all watched the damn thing. I'm not going to give you, like, the basic plot of what's going on in this video. We have a lot of ground to cover, so if you need to watch it, I'll link the trailer down below. So, okay, let's start with the cityscape of Minrathous. I know the first question is going to be, what is floating in the sky? But I honestly don't know. By the design, people have been guessing that this is the Tevinter Circle of Magi, which acts a lot different than the southern version, by the way, but given that it almost is acting currently like a floating watchtower in this trailer, I'm going to lean away from that idea. Now, given how important it looks, I would take a stab at it being the main palace, but we don't really have proof for that at the moment. All we can say for certain, other than that it floats, is that it seems to have spotlights and some sort of magical PA system, which is kind of interesting. And that's really all I have to say on Tevinter, but there have been some interesting tidbits that have come out thanks to the press event that was held during Summer Games Fest. Epler says, and something that we've kind of hinted at, but we've never really shown explicitly, is the idea that Tevinter is built on the bones of the ancient Elven Empire. Tevinter itself, Minrathous itself, all of the magic you see, that's just a pale imitation of what the elves are capable of. So you'll start to see as you get deeper into the game. The elves, for example, work delirium into their building materials. Tevinter can't quite figure out how to do that, so instead you'll see more gold and gems kind of imitating it, but not ever quite approaching what the elves were able to do, and really creating that continuity of the space. So pretty quick here, we see new demon designs. This is a rage demon, and later on we get to see a pride demon and some wraiths. Now, from my knowledge, all the demons got a redesign, and there might be a lore reason for it. From the Game Rant article, Epler was quick to note how demons are magical manifestations of emotion from the Fade, which means certain triggers could be causing this. I'll be honest, I do miss the other designs, but I am super curious about what could be causing these new ones, although, like, the most obvious guess is that the veil is weakening. Maybe they're actually pulling a, like, Dr. Manhattan, and this is them in kind of like that process of obtaining a physical form. Something I wanted to point out is this random pipe here. There's a couple more in the background, actually. Now, we aren't sure if Tevinter has tap water, like, you know, the real world does, but they do have a sewer system, and it looks like plenty of drainage for how, like, tiered the city is, so it's possible. Also, like, it's a shit ton of rats. Oh my god. Then we get a first look at Nev. I'll talk more about her much later when we get to the official trailer, but yeah, I just really love her voice, and if you happen to know who this is, like you recognize the voice, please comment down below. I want to know who this is. Now, an interesting line here from Nev is that Solas is working alone. From the Trespasser slides, it says the elves were going missing and that Fen'Harel was responsible for calling them. There was also a sort of hidden dialogue in Val Rayo of an elven man telling his Arlesian master that he had dreams of Mythal calling to him, which perhaps is related because Solas kind of absorbed Mythal a little bit. He does something to her. However, Nev says that he's been working alone. Even in Tevinter Nights, there is some sort of group that claims they kind of work for Fen'Harel. They really sound like they don't actually know what he wants, but are just kind of causing chaos in his name. I'm not sure what is happening here, but we at least see that from the majority of this, the bulk of the work perhaps, Solas has been on his own. Our next scene, we come from a giant alluvion that reminds me of the giant alluvion that Solus steps into at the end of Trespasser. Now, to be very clear, this is not the same hill as Trespasser. It just doesn't look like it. Although, thinking about it, I'm not sure we ever really knew where exactly we were at the end of that DLC, but this looks pretty similar, so maybe Trespasser is actually in Arlathan. But my point is, big alluvion. I honestly have no idea if the two are related, but I'd like to think they are. So the heroes walk up a hill and hey, look, looks like an entrance to whatever ritual place they're about to be in, and it's again flanked by wolf statues. Even when they get to the ritual site, the wolves are there flanking the door. Now, it's my personal speculation that Solus was some sort of guard and that perhaps the title of, like, wolf or fen something was just, like, an ancient elven common doorman or something. Honestly, this is just a lot of speculation. I mostly just bring this up because this is an Inquisition lore fact that's been carried over to Veilguard, and it's just kind of nice to see that attention to detail. And now the moment that I personally have been waiting to share for a long time, the big elven monument where the ritual is taking place. The time I spent during the playtest just looking at this was stupid, let me tell you. But if you have not been following my Mysterious Head saga, let me recap you via the magic of reusing my own footage. Yes, welcome back to previously on Gildrathalin. If you have watched enough of my content, you should recognize some of these, actually all but two. But if you are new here, let me take you on a very shortened, condensed journey of what these are. In 2015, Trespasser was released and features some strange statues around the ancient elven areas. Two on top of these, like, odd, robish, dragon-adjacent statue-looking things, and two on top of an alluvion. We have since dubbed these Moonhead, Sun, and Horns. As a warning, I've given all these stupid little shapes, like, names, and I'm going to be using them a lot, and I'm so sorry. It just kind of happens. I didn't mean for them to have dumb names, but here we are. Now, while it came up in conversation, the idea at the time was that Moonhead was Mythal, given that it was located in the Lyrium Processing Center that we believe belonged to Mythal. From there, Sun went to Elgranon, given that he was connected to the sun, and who the fuck was Horns was really anybody's guess. Now, it was like that for years, until I got a message from Cal, and made a video on it. For the entire story on that, you're just gonna have to watch the video, but basically she found an unused game asset of more heads. The most interesting one I dubbed Triad. See, this one was the most interesting because the head shape was incredibly similar to the strange statue of Falandin and Urthemiel we see in Dragon Age Origins. But anyway, theories came left and right about them, and when a new mural was released, this time focusing on Moonhead and a new head shape that we called Beetle. Many people at this time also connected Beetle back to the Mosaic and Trespasser, which at the time I was kind of uncertain of, and I actually even missed in my video, but I'm now completely convinced it's the same person. Again, more on that later. So to jump to this, we now have two more heads, the exact amount we need for either the locked away old gods or the Evanuris, if not both. Now, mostly because I like completing sets rather than them actually needing names, I'm dubbing the new two Nib and Line. Welcome to the party, kids. So after collecting everything, my personal guess is that while the symbols represent the elven gods, them being the same number as the old gods, and BioWare now bringing Triad head shape back into the actual lore rather than cut content, I think they might be both. Maybe not the same person, but this symbol represents both. So, okay, I think I have a better guess for the Elven God lineup than the Old God lineup, so let's start with the Elven so I can just feel smart for a second. Now, the largest bubble, Beetle, is Elgranon. He is the leader of the gods, so it makes sense that he is in the middle. It would also make the horned man in the mural Elgranon, at least someone associated with him, perhaps. Maybe it's not Elgranon, but like, someone, I don't know. It's an Elgranon association, not necessarily the god. I don't know. Ghil is then Moonhead, given that she has been set up the most in media so far. It would also make sense for her to be the farther end of the line, given that she is the last known addition to the Elven Pantheon. Now, Falandin is the only one I think we can be sure of, apparently. I'm the only one that thinks that, though, but it has to be Triad, given previous installments, and it's almost a free space here in my mind. But that leaves the others open, and really not a lot to go on. So from there, I looked at the Dragon Age Origin mask. Since Elgranon is already taken, that would leave Juné, and honestly, I've already been calling the shape horns, and Juné's mask has horns, so, like, we're gonna make that Juné. And then Soleil's was the final blow to unlocking this puzzle for me. In the mosaic of her, she has this crown that looks like Sun's head, even down to the right number of spikes. With her filled into that slot, it now makes her mirror to Juné, which is also her partner's place. Now, I should say I don't actually know if they were lovers, but you can pair up all the Evanuris. Elgranon doesn't really get a partner because Mythal is dead by the time the gods were locked up, sort of, you know what I mean if you played Inquisition. But from there you get Endril as Nib and Dirthamin as Line. So the very first thing you see is, hey, look, 2 of the heads have been doubled up. Frankly, I have no idea why that is, and I have heard that there might be some whoopsies that made it into the trailer, so I can only assume that this is one of them. Now, something I'm not sure is an oopsie or not is the head shape that I've been calling Moonhead in the middle swapped with Beetle. Even in the trailer we got like a while back ago, it puts Beetle at the center of this arrangement rather than Moonhead. Now, if it's not a mistake, this could mean that perhaps this place was to worship whoever Moonhead was, rather than the Beetle. But it's not just those 2 that are swapped. They're all kind of in different places. It's just a mess. I don't know if that means something or if it doesn't. Now, there are 2 rows of statues, one smaller and one bigger. Other than the doubled up heads, the lower heads match that of the higher up ones. Now, why is that? Why are there 2? Do they mean 2 different things? I don't know, and quite frankly, that was what I was spending so much time for. It's like, why are there 2? Why are there 2? I actually still don't know why there are 2. I'm very curious about it. The scaffolding. No, I have no idea who is trying to rebuild this place. One would assume Solus, like, he actually has scaffolding in his own room in Skyhold, and using magic, he could surely rebuild whatever he needed to. I guess the question I have is, why did it need to be intact in the first place? Like, you can see it drawing power, and like how bad of state was it in originally? How much work is this what took 10 years? Now, I did see a theory that 2 statues were broken, so 2 gods were released, but 2 statues did not break. 3 did. So I don't think that fact is related. Could there be a 3rd god released? Hey, perhaps, but we don't see them. This begs the question of why there are only 2 gods released, which is probably related to why there were only 2 orbs lit up in the various trailer murals. What is that? I can't say. I'll be honest, I don't even quite know. I have a theory, but I don't actually know for certain either. So hey, that blade, huh? Now we've already seen pictures of Rook holding it and even marketing around this blade. It's kind of a big deal. How do we get it? Man, doesn't that seem to be the question. But let's talk about what it is. It is very blue, isn't it? There's not a lot of blue in Thedas that color except for lyrium. Is it lyrium? Now here's also where we bring up the story that Meryl tells Hawke in Dragon Age 2, that Fen'Harel told the gods of a blade and then tricked them with it, locking the Evaneris in the heavens and the Forgotten One in the void. I don't actually know, like genuinely, if this is that blade. I don't. But the story was at the front of my mind when playing. This is also the original icon that was scraped from Steam. Now there does seem to be a new icon, and you know what, it's fine. I am very partial to the old one, to be honest. So when Rook is like walking around and trying to stop the ritual, there's a big question of what is Varric saying to Solus? Now I had the advantage of hearing this with subtitles enabled like a long time ago, so I'd at least like to highlight Mogwai on Twitter, who I think nailed it. That's exactly how I remember the conversation going. Now, they did have some trouble with Solus's line, so how I remember and how I hear it listening again, Solus would be saying something like, I understand your hesitance, but what I do now must be done. This is vastly beyond your comprehension. Now, this might not be 100%, but this is kind of the gist of the conversation that I remember, at least. Now, after the ritual is interrupted, things start to get a little wacky. Solus is no longer holding the blade. I don't know where Varric is. There is an unknown lump at the bottom of the stairs that is glowing green. Also, Rook has just jumped positions. He was pretty far from the stairs and now he's looking right up at Solus. I sincerely believe that there's a cut here. And there was another clip recently from the marketing of a new Solus line that could also fit around this section.
You have no idea what you have done.
Now, a lot of people are probably saying, hey, don't you know? And I actually don't. The finer details around this scene have changed a bit. And I'm kind of curious to see what happens next. My memory isn't that good. It's been a minute. Now, right before the trailer ends, Solus also seems to be, like, stepping forward and, like, in movement. And there's, like, this puff of green magic. What's that about? Then, yeah, what happens next? Is Varric dead? Who exactly are Moonhead and Beetle? Well, that's not my place to tell you. And I'll see you this fall. Reveal trailer. Okay, now for everybody's favorite trailer. We all loved this, right? I'll be honest, I get the dislike for the tone. I don't like the song. And yes, there could have been a better way to show off the game for the first time, but I also heard and got their argument that showing off the companions, which is largely the selling point of Dragon Age games, was the main point of this. We have had a ton of trailers with Solas. They wanted to make one without him, as requested by many, may I add. I do think the funniest bit of the trailer, and I remember saying this in a meeting, was that Varric and Harding are musing that they need a leader for the team, and Harding is so amazed at what Rook is doing. But Rook, just look at this dumbass. He sees he's about to get tackled by a bunch of Venatori, and he decides that the best course of action was to smash a chandelier on top of all of them, including himself. Dude, he's still underneath that. He could have gotten hurt. Those things can be heavy. And I mean this sincerely. Honestly, this is the type of person who will bring down Solas. And I'm not trying to be derogatory. The person who somehow puts no thought to their actions and becomes completely unpredictable. The himbo, the everyman, the person that Solas likes to think he's better in and underestimates. It's like how grandmasters at chess don't like playing people who don't know the game that well because they make strange moves and they can't predict the next one. I don't really know if that was the intent, but when I saw the trailer for the first time, that was the vibe I got. And just while I'm down with that, I also understand why some people aren't. Anyway, we are in Minrathous at a bar, and Varric and Harding are listing out people they want to recruit to stop Solas. Varric. Now, we all sort of knew Varric was back, as other than Solas, he has been the only familiar voice in the teasers we have had all these years. He really doesn't need an introduction, but in case we have some returners to the world of Thedas or someone new is joining us, let's give a quick overview. Varric Tethras, level rogue and storyteller, first appeared in the series in Dragon Age 2. He is best friends with the Dragon Age 2 PC Hawk, and honestly looks out for you and all of your companions. While he loves to tell tall tales, there is always an ounce of truth to them, whether it be the emotion he's trying to sell or a point he's trying to get across. Despite his love for relaxing in bars and chatting with anyone who will listen, he keeps getting dragged into adventures. Along with his debut in Dragon Age 2, he has also appeared in 3 different comic runs as major characters and returned as a companion again in Inquisition. Now, his relationship with the Inquisitor is much more complicated than it is with Hawk, as it's more akin to a boss-employer relationship, but it is still some level of trust between them. At the end of Inquisition, he ends up being elected the Viscount of Kirkwall, and apparently is one of the best they've had in ages as he actually cares about building up the damaged infrastructure in Kirkwall and has the connections to actually getting it done. However, as of the comic The Missing, he has left it all behind, which honestly he's been wanting to do since the beginning, and it was technically a temporary title to begin with, blah blah blah, no one cares. And he's off to go catch a man he used to call his friend, Solas. Now, Solas and Varric have a unique relationship compared to many of the other Dragon Age Inquisition companions, as they both are 2 of 4 characters that you have to recruit no matter what, so they end up having a lot of screen time. Now, this section is already getting a little lengthy, so I encourage you to go read or even listen to the banter between them in Inquisition, which I'll link below, by the way. Their relationship is honestly summed up best in Cole's personal quest, where the boy who is a spirit made flesh has to choose between becoming more like a spirit or more like a human. Now, Solas advocates for Cole staying the same, being who he is, and becoming the spirit of compassion, while Varric fights for him to become human, to change and be anything he wants to be. Solas represents the comfort of the past and fighting for that to continue, while Varric challenges that and advocates for the wild and unpredictable future. Now, as for character design, we see the full updated Varric look in the Missing comic. He is getting a bit old and aging rather gracefully, I would say. Harding. Inquisition scout Lace Harding's first appearance was early in Inquisition. Her and her family lived in the Ferelden hinterlands, and she signed on to the Inquisition to basically see the world and help save the world. In the game, while she is not a companion, she is a semi-romance for the Inquisitor. Harding tends to be the first person you talk to when starting a new level, and often the 2 of you can have a little bit of, flirty conversation. There is even some dialogue in a few areas referencing this flirting, but overall, flirting with Harding does not affect your romance with any of the other characters, and nothing progresses between the 2 of you beyond talking. She has become beloved in the fandom for her upbeat personality and adventurous attitude and just being kind of cute. And honestly, she's one of the few characters to show genuine concern for the Inquisitor after major events. She also makes an appearance in the comic The Missing and has joined in with Varric in hunting down Solas. Now, she probably has the most interesting press release note, which reads, "The Dwarven Scout returns to the fray as a companion with her big heart, positive outlook, and a ready bow, as well as unexpected magical powers." What that means, I literally can't say, but let me know what you think it means. Nev. Nev Gallus is probably the character we have seen the most of in this list, minus, the Inquisition characters, but her first appearance was in Tevinter Nights, and she has made a cameo in The Missing as well. Nev is a private detective working out of Minrathous. She's a mage that prefers ice spells, and the EA press release describes her as a cynic fighting for a better future, both as a private detective and a member of Tevinter's rebellious Shadow Dragons. Now, the gist of her story in Tevinter Nights is that she basically discovers and stops a Venatori plot to break free a demon that is trapped under Minrathous. Later in The Missing, we learned of her involvement with the Shadow Dragons, which is basically a political group that opposes the Venatori, and she helps rescue a group of slaves and helps Varric and Harding search for solace. She is missing her leg below the knee and explains that her prosthetic is Dwarven made. Just a quick side note, her nails are painted, which actually isn't new. Even Meryl had painted fingers in Dragon Age 2. But just a prayer circle that we can give Rook colored nails. If that's an option for Rook, that would actually be for me personally. That's for me. She's also the only new companion that we see in the gameplay trailer, meaning that she's the first one we get to recruit in the game. Davrin and Asan. Now, we actually don't have that much information on Davrin, other than that he's technically one of the two new companions we knew about first, although we didn't really know it at the time. I mean, we could probably guess it. It's August 2020. BioWare released a small teaser that had a few in-progress clips of various Dragon Age stuff, including announcing that Ikamondi was voicing a character named Davrin.
Nobody dies on my watch. For the Wardens!
Now, if you don't know Ikamondi, this isn't his first BioWare rodeo, as he also voiced Javik in Mass Effect 3. Per the press release, he is a bold and charming Grey Warden who has made a name for himself as a monster hunter. Now, his Valisthlan is new to us, as we've not seen an exact match on anyone else. Personally, I think it looks the most similar to Gillenon's, but I could see an argument for Janae's as well. Just the shape of the lines look more Janae than it does Gillenon to me. But let's also touch on that, yes, that is a baby griffin. We don't know exactly how old he is, but it is confirmed on Twitter that his name is Asan, which means arrow in Elvish. Now, if you were confused on how griffins return to Thedas, it's basically the entire plot of the novel Last Flight. So a quick TLDR, a Blood Mage Grey Warden, who is the twin sister of Garrohel, hero of the Fourth Flight, accidentally killed all the griffins with her magic, when she was actually trying to save them, but before they could all be wiped out, she took a clutch of healthy eggs and used her magic to preserve them in suspended animation to try and wait out the accidental disease that she caused. The eggs are then found by Warden Recuse, who found the woman's journal, and I'm assuming this is one of the eggs that hatched. The only other thing to note is that this area that they're fighting the Darkspawn in looks to be the same area as the non-romanceable tree from one of our earliest looks of what we now know as Veilguard. If that didn't make sense, don't worry about it. It's okay. You don't need to know. Lucanus. Lucanus de la Morte is another Tevinter Nights character, and while he doesn't appear in the short story The Wake, it's about him. Lucanus is part of the Antivan Crows. More specifically, he belongs to House de la Morte, the current leaders of that organization. His grandmother Katerina is the current fierce and brutal First Talon, and he's close to his cousin Ilario, another Crow. Now, as mentioned in the trailer, he has the specialty of killing mages, which gained him notoriety, and he's called the Demon by some. I do want to note that while he is labeled as Mage Killer, he is not part of the Tevinter faction that uses a similar title. He is Antivan, trained under the Crows, and is just good at killing mages. Now, his story in Tevinter Nights is about him fulfilling a contract to kill a Venatori mage with his cousin Ilario. Now, something to note is that he is mage adjacent, I suppose. He can't use magic, but in Tevinter Nights he can slightly sense it. He's 1% mage. The short story, The Wake, however, is an unusual one. Lucanus has died, and the Crows gather to hold a wake for him. His cousin Ilario was just absolutely beside himself with grief, lamenting on how close they were, and just honestly super upset. The story does not say how he died, and at least seeing that he is in the trailer, I don't think he is as dead as he seems. Emmerich. The final Tevinter Nights character, Emmerich Volcairn, part of the Morn Watch in Navarra. The Mordwatch is a subsection of the Mortalitasi that basically watches over the spirits of the Grand Necropolis and makes sure nothing like super weird is happening. Emmerich really only appears as a small side character in Defender Knights, letting the younger Mornwatcher Myrna go on the adventure instead. He has a skeletal assistant Manfred who doesn't seem to talk but can do like a number of things. He is also featured in a short story that was released a while ago, which has him go on a small adventure to put a soul at rest with his friend Johanna. It's here that we learn he has the ability to corpse whisper, basically getting some information out of someone who is already dead. In the case of the story, it's a skull. Now, this is actually an ability we've already seen in the world of Dragon Age, so I'm kind of excited to see how this plays out in game. Bellara. So this is kind of basically the same info we have as Davrin. We see Bellara's name in the 2020 trailer, and she is voiced by Ji Yeon Han.
No, it's okay. That's the good kind of rumble.
Now, from her IMDb, Ji Yeon Han has mostly done TV acting, but she did play Dax in Anthem. Now, like, I understand that Anthem is not very popular, and I, to be blunt, personally hated Dax in Anthem, but I do like Bellara. I really do. We know that she's part of the Veil Jumpers, and the EA press release describes her as a creative and romantic Veil Jumper obsessed with uncovering ancient secrets. Now, her Valisin is super interesting, as we have not seen something this intricate since Dragon Age Origins. We never actually got which Origins Valisin belongs to which elven god, but it was always my assumption that, like, the one that I think is closest to belonged to Soleil's. However, and this is pure theory, I was honestly never told the answer, but to me her Valisin looks so unique and might even be a little bit of a red tint, maybe? So my mind is wondering if this is the Valisin to one of the Forgotten Ones, as mentioned in the now defunct game Last Court. I love you, we miss you, but Last Court described elves with strange red Valisin. Now, to be clear, it looks very brown in all the photos we have. If this ends up being a Forgotten One Valisin, then I think they went with like a henna red route than like a blood red that I've been thinking all these years. Tosh. So this is the easiest section for me to write. I'm so excited. Tosh is completely new. We've never seen this character before. What you see here is all that we know at the moment. That and the EA press release notes that Tosh is part of the Lords of Fortune, a treasure hunting group from what we know now, and lives for adventure and doesn't mind taking risks. Now, after all the companions intro, we then get to our new friends fighting together at where I assume is the ritual site from the gameplay trailer. However, there is some crazy stuff going on. First, like this blight branch thing, there is a fucking huge eclipse in the background. Like, I've seen the eclipse twice now, and it is never that big. Oh, and like, you know, the whole dragon thing, that looks really, fine. And it's here I would like to read a small snippet from the ever-famous, my favorite Dragon Age 2 Codex entry, the Emergent Compendium. 2 shadow spheres among stars, subtitled An Eclipse as Fen'Harel Stirred. And that, dear patrons, is all that we know of the trailers. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong? Feel free to tweet me at Gildathon on Twitter or comment down below with your thoughts. Duress Sherol.